You're good at being small.
Maybe.
You're good at being small. Simone Harper said it loud enough for everyone in the law office to hear. Across the polished conference table sat her husband, Marcus Hale. 10 years of marriage reduced to a stack of divorce papers and a signature line. Beside Simone sat Andre Lawson, Marcus's closest friend for nearly 15 years. The same man now holding Simone's hand beneath the table. Neither of them noticed how calm Marcus looked. They thought he was losing everything, his wife, his home, his future. What they didn't know was that a sealed filing scheduled to become public in less than 48 hours would reveal who Marcus really was. And when that happened, Simone would finally understand that the man she called small had been carrying a secret far larger than their entire marriage. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 3 months earlier, Marcus still believed loyalty mattered more than money. The recycling facility sat on the edge of Dayton, Ohio, surrounded by warehouses, rail lines, and acres of industrial land. Every morning before sunrise, Marcus arrived with a travel mug of coffee and a clipboard tucked beneath his arm. At 38, he was the operations supervisor. It was not glamorous work. Most people never thought about where waste went after it left their homes. Marcus did. He knew every truck route, every processing line, every maintenance schedule. The employees respected him because he never asked anyone to do work he wouldn't do himself. If a conveyor belt jammed, Marcus helped clear it. If someone worked overtime, Marcus stayed too. Nobody would have looked at him and guessed he possessed anything unusual. He drove a 7-year-old pickup truck. He wore work boots with worn soles. His watch cost less than a nice dinner. And that was exactly how he preferred it. That evening he pulled into the driveway of the suburban home he shared with Simone. The house was comfortable but ordinary. No gates, no luxury cars, no signs of wealth. Inside, Simone sat at the kitchen island scrolling through photos on her phone. Marcus leaned down and kissed her cheek. She barely looked up. "How was the fundraiser?" he asked. "Good." The answer came quickly. Too quickly. Marcus opened the refrigerator and reached for a bottle of water. "You raised enough for the hospital project. We exceeded the goal. That's great," she shrugged. "It would have been greater if I didn't spend the entire night standing next to people who own private jets." Marcus smiled faintly. Most people don't own private jets. Exactly. Something in her tone lingered. Not anger, disappointment. The kind that had become more common during the past year. Simone worked in corporate fundraising for a major healthcare nonprofit. She spent her days around executives, donors, investors, and wealthy families. Increasingly, she compared her own life to theirs. Marcus noticed it. The expensive vacations on her social media feed. The conversations about vacation homes. The subtle comments. The questions. The comparisons. He simply didn't realize how deeply those comparisons had begun affecting their marriage. A notification appeared on Simone's screen. Marcus recognized the name immediately. Andre Lawson. His friend. His best friend, if he was being honest. Andre had built a successful real estate development company before turning 40. He owned luxury condos. He appeared in local business magazines. People admired him. Andre never missed an opportunity to remind them why. "Andre's hosting another networking event next week," Simone said casually. Marcus twisted the cap off his bottle. "Sounds like Andre." She laughed softly. "He knows how to get people in a room. That's one way to describe him." Her smile widened. For a second, Marcus felt oddly outside the conversation happening in his own kitchen. The feeling disappeared almost as quickly as it came. Later that night, while Simone showered upstairs, Marcus sat alone on the back patio. Spring air drifted through the neighborhood. His phone buzzed. The sender displayed only a New York law firm's name. Marcus stared at the screen. The message was brief. Please contact our office regarding the Hale Family Trust Administration. He exhaled slowly. Another legal notice. Another document. Another reminder. Since his grandfather's death 8 months earlier, lawyers had been contacting him regularly. Trust reviews, ownership transfers, board approvals, confidential disclosures. Marcus kept every document locked inside a small fireproof box in his home office. He had never shown Simone, not because he intended to deceive her, because nothing was final. Not yet. And because lately every conversation about money seemed to make things worse. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. Inside the house, Simone laughed. Marcus glanced through the window. She was standing in the kitchen again, looking at her phone, smiling at something someone had sent. A second later, another notification appeared. Andre Lawson. Marcus looked away. For the first time, a small knot formed in his stomach. Maybe it was nothing, probably nothing, but something felt different, something he couldn't quite name. The next morning began like every other, until noon. Marcus was reviewing maintenance reports when his personal phone rang. The number displayed a Manhattan area code. He answered. Marcus Hale speaking. A calm voice replied immediately. Mr. Hale, this is Jonathan Mercer from Mercer and Bain Trust Attorneys in New York. Marcus straightened. The attorney paused. Then he delivered the words that would quietly begin changing everything. I'm calling to inform you that the final approval process has officially begun. Marcus did not move for a few seconds. The noise of the recycling floor carried through the glass wall of his office. Machines hummed. Forklifts backed up with soft warning beeps. Workers called to each other over the steady grind of conveyor belts. Everything around him stayed ordinary, almost painfully ordinary, while the voice from New York waited on the line. The final approval process, Marcus asked. Yes, Jonathan Mercer said. The trust committee has completed its review. The remaining filings are procedural, but your signature will be required soon. Until then, the matter remains confidential. Marcus looked down at his work shirt. Gray fabric, company logo, a small oil stain near the cuff from helping repair a jammed baler that morning. Anyone walking past his office would have seen exactly what Simone saw every day. A tired man in work boots, a man with a steady job and no shine around him. Understood, Marcus said. We'll send a secure packet by courier, Mercer continued. Please do not discuss the contents with anyone outside counsel until we give clearance. The ownership structure is sensitive. Marcus almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sensitive. That was one word for it. By the time he hung up, his coffee had gone cold. He sat there with the phone in his hand, thinking about Simone at the kitchen island the night before. The way her face had softened at Andre's message. The way her disappointment had filled the room without needing to raise its voice. He told himself he would talk to her that weekend. Not about the trust, not yet. About them, about the distance growing between them like a crack under paint. But Andre moved faster. That Friday evening, Marcus came home to find Andre already in his kitchen. He was leaning against the counter in a camel-colored coat that looked too expensive for an ordinary visit. His watch caught the light every time he lifted his glass. Simone stood across from him, laughing at something he had said. Not polite laughter, real laughter, the kind that used to belong to Marcus. Andre turned when he heard the door. There he is, Andre said, spreading his arms. The hardest working man in waste management. The word sounded friendly. Almost. Marcus set his keys in the bowl near the door. Didn't know you were coming by? Last minute, Simone said quickly. Andre was nearby after a meeting. Big zoning presentation, Andre added. City council investors a few people who actually understand growth. He smiled when he said it. Marcus looked at him for a beat, then nodded. Good for you. Andre lifted his glass. Trying to be like you, man. Stable, reliable, humble. Simone looked down at her wine. Something in the silence after that made Marcus feel the insult more clearly than the words. Dinner was takeout from a Thai place Simone liked. Marcus paid for it without thinking. Andre talked through most of the meal. He described a new mixed-use development near Columbus, a hotel investor from Miami, a golf weekend with men whose names Simone seemed to recognize from fundraising circles. Simone listened closely. Her eyes stayed bright. When Marcus mentioned a safety audit at the facility, Andre gave him a sympathetic smile. "That's important too," he said. "Somebody has to keep the gears turning." It was the kind of sentence that could pass as respect if you didn't hear the softness of pity beneath it. Marcus heard it. So did Simone. And she did not correct him. Later, while Marcus loaded plates into the dishwasher, Andre helped Simone carry empty cartons to the trash. They stood near the side door for longer than they needed to. Their voices dropped low enough that Marcus could not hear every word, but he heard Simone say, "I'm tired of feeling behind." Andre's reply came softer. "You're not behind. You're just attached to someone who stopped moving." Marcus closed the dishwasher slowly. The room felt colder after that. Over the next 2 weeks, Andre became a regular presence in ways that never looked obvious enough to challenge. He sent Simone articles about wealth building. He invited her to nonprofit donor lunches because he had an extra seat. He dropped by with wine after evening meetings. He offered to introduce her to board members and developers who could help her career. Marcus watched the pattern form. Simone no longer told him everything first. When something frustrated her at work, she texted Andre before she talked to her husband. When she needed advice about a donor, Andre had a contact. When she wanted to vent about money, Andre knew exactly what to say. Marcus still tried. He made dinner. He asked questions. He listened when she answered, even when the answers were short. But some nights, Simone sat beside him on the couch with her body there and her attention elsewhere. Her phone angled slightly away, her thumb moving fast. A small smile appearing and disappearing before Marcus could ask who had sent the message. One Saturday, they attended a charity mixer for Simone's nonprofit at a renovated downtown hotel. Marcus wore his best navy suit, clean but not new. Simone looked beautiful in a black dress and gold earrings, graceful in a room full of donors and executives. At the registration table, Andre appeared beside them like he had been waiting. "Simone," he said warmly, "you look incredible." Then his eyes moved to Marcus. "Brother, you clean up well." Marcus smiled, because that was what men did when the insult came wrapped in charm. Inside the ballroom, Andre moved easily from group to group. He introduced Simone to developers, bankers, attorneys. He made her laugh. He made her visible. Marcus stood beside her at first, then slowly found himself pushed to the edge of conversations he had not been invited to join. At one point, Simone stepped away with Andre to meet a donor from Cincinnati. Marcus watched her remove her wedding ring and slip it into her clutch before shaking the man's hand. It was quick, practiced, almost invisible. But Marcus saw it. For the rest of the night, he carried that small image like a stone in his chest. On the drive home, Simone looked out the window. "You were quiet tonight," she said. "I didn't want to get in your way." She sighed. "That's not what I meant." "What did you mean?" She turned to him, tired now, less careful. "Sometimes I feel like you disappear in rooms like that." Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "Maybe because nobody's looking for me in rooms like that." "That's exactly the problem," she said. He said nothing after that. 2 days later, the secure packet from Mercer and Bain arrived at the recycling facility. It came by courier in a stiff white envelope, sealed twice Marcus's name, typed in clean black letters. He signed for it in the front office, while a young receptionist joked that it looked serious. Marcus smiled politely and tucked it under his arm. Back in his office, he locked the door and opened the envelope. Inside were preliminary transfer documents, confidentiality notices, and a summary page stamped with words that made his pulse slow. Hale Environmental Holdings. Beneficiary transition pending. Board notification scheduled. Marcus read the first page twice, then slid everything back into the envelope. Before he could lock it away, his phone buzzed on the desk. A text lit up the screen. It was from Simone. But it was not meant for him. Andre, I can't keep pretending Marcus is enough. Sometimes I wonder what my life would look like if I had chosen someone who actually wanted more. Marcus stared at the message until the screen dimmed. For a moment he wondered if there had been some mistake. A delayed text, an old conversation, something innocent that only looked terrible because of everything already weighing on his mind. Then he looked again. The words did not change. I can't keep pretending Marcus is enough. Not angry words. Not words spoken during a fight. That was what hurt most. They were honest words, private words. The kind people only shared when they believed they were safe. Marcus set the phone down carefully. Outside his office window, employees moved through another normal afternoon. A forklift crossed the yard. A delivery truck backed into a loading dock. The world kept moving as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. A crack he had ignored for months had finally become impossible to miss. He left work later than usual that evening. The sealed trust documents remained locked inside his desk drawer. During the drive home, his thoughts kept circling the same question. When had Simone stopped believing in him? Not loving him. Believing in him. Those felt like different things now. By the time he reached the house, the lights were already on. Simone stood in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up and smiled. The same smile he had seen thousands of times. The same smile that suddenly felt harder to read. "How was your day?" she asked. "Busy. Mine too." The conversation faded after that. Neither mentioned what sat hidden between them. A text message she didn't know he had seen. A trust she didn't know existed. Two secrets occupying the same marriage. Later that night, Marcus sat awake in bed while Simone slept beside him. Moonlight filtered through the curtains. He remembered another version of them. Two young people sharing a tiny apartment above a pizza shop, counting quarters for laundry, splitting grocery lists, laughing at nothing. Back then, Simone never cared about expensive neighborhoods or executive titles. She used to tell him she admired how steady he was, how reliable, how kind. Somewhere along the way, reliability had stopped looking like strength. Now it looked like limitation. The realization left a hollow ache in his chest. 3 days later, Marcus boarded a flight to Chicago. Simone believed he was attending an operations conference. Technically, it wasn't a lie. There would be meetings, just not the kind she imagined. A black sedan collected him from O'Hare Airport. The driver knew his name before he introduced himself. That still felt strange. Marcus had spent most of his life avoiding special treatment. The car carried him downtown to a law office overlooking the river. The conference room felt nothing like his workplace in Ohio. Glass walls, dark wood, quiet voices. People who billed more per hour than Marcus earned in a week. When the attorneys entered, they greeted him respectfully. Not because of who he was, because of what he was about to become. Jonathan Mercer sat across from him. Several thick binders covered the table. "Thank you for coming, Marcus." Marcus nodded. "Let's get started." The meeting lasted nearly 4 hours. Ownership structures, board governance, voting rights, trust mechanisms, tax implications, layer after layer of legal architecture built over decades. Near the end, Mercer slid a document toward him. Marcus looked down. The company name appeared across the top. Hale Environmental Holdings. Below it sat numbers large enough to feel unreal. Assets, valuations, ownership percentages, projected distributions. Marcus remained silent. Not because he didn't understand, because he understood perfectly. His grandfather had never spoken about wealth as if it mattered. He talked about responsibility, work, character. The company had started generations earlier as a small waste management operation before expanding into environmental technology and industrial recycling systems. Now it operated across multiple states, and after final approval, Marcus would become controlling shareholder. Mercer folded his hands. The process is moving smoothly. Marcus looked up. How long? A few weeks, possibly less. And until then, complete confidentiality. Marcus nodded slowly. That part worried him less than it should have. The truth was, he wasn't afraid of the wealth. He was afraid of what it might reveal. Not about himself, about his marriage. The flight home felt longer. At 30,000 feet, Marcus stared out the window and wondered what Simone would say if he told her everything tonight. Would she be relieved, excited, proud, or would she suddenly become the version of herself she used to be? The question had no answer. Not yet. When he arrived home after dark, Simone sat on the couch, scrolling through her tablet. She barely looked up. How was Chicago productive? Good, that was all. No questions, no curiosity, no interest in what had occupied 2 days of his life. Marcus sat beside her. Silence stretched between them. Eventually he asked, "Do you ever think we've stopped talking to each other?" Simone lowered the tablet. "What does that mean?" "It means we used to tell each other everything." Her expression hardened slightly. "We still talk. Not like before." She looked away first. "People change, Marcus." The words lingered in the room. People change. Maybe they did. Or maybe they simply became more honest about who they already were. The following weekend, Andre invited them to dinner at a high-end steakhouse outside Columbus. The reservation was under his name. The private table overlooked the city skyline. Everything about the evening felt carefully designed. Andre spent most of dinner discussing investments development projects and business acquisitions. The waiters seemed to know him. The manager stopped by personally. Simone looked impressed. Marcus noticed. Andre noticed too. Halfway through dessert, Andre leaned back in his chair. Hypothetical question. Simone smiled. "Those are always dangerous." Andre laughed. "Maybe. Let's say someone spends their whole life working hard, but never really gets ahead." His eyes shifted briefly toward Marcus. Would loyalty still be enough? Simone hesitated, only for a second. Then she answered quietly. "I don't know anymore." The table fell silent. Andre lifted his wine glass. Marcus looked out across the city lights. Neither of them realized how much those words mattered. Neither of them knew that less than a month remained before everything they believed about him would begin to collapse. And as they walked toward the parking lot that night, Andre casually draped an arm across Simone's shoulders. She did not move away. Marcus did not mention what he had seen. Not the text message, not Andre's arm around Simone. Not the growing feeling that he was watching his marriage leave before it officially ended. For nearly 2 weeks he carried the knowledge alone. Every morning he woke beside Simone. Every evening he came home to the same house, the same routines, the same polite conversations. But something essential had disappeared. Trust was strange that way. It could survive arguments. It could survive stress. Sometimes it could even survive disappointment. But once doubt settled in, every silence seemed louder. Every glance lasted too long. Every explanation felt incomplete. One Thursday evening, Simone arrived home later than expected. Marcus was grilling chicken on the back patio when she stepped through the gate. "You're late," he said. She dropped her purse onto a chair. "There was a donor dinner. How'd it go? Fine?" The answer came automatically. Then her phone buzzed. Marcus noticed the smile before she could hide it. "Good news?" "Just work?" She turned the screen face down. Marcus nodded. He did not challenge her. That almost seemed to frustrate her more. "You don't have to interrogate me every time I get a text." "I wasn't interrogating you." "Then why ask?" Marcus stared at her for a moment. "Because husbands usually ask their wives how their day was." She looked away first. The conversation ended there. But the distance remained. A few days later, Simone visited her mother. When she returned home that evening, her mood felt noticeably different. Sharper, more certain. Marcus knew the reason before she said a word. Linda Harper had never hidden her opinion of him. In her eyes, Marcus had always been decent but ordinary, dependable but unimpressive. The kind of man people settled for before life offered something better. "Mom saw Rachel's new house today," Simone said while putting away groceries. Marcus continued unloading bags. "Nice. 6 bedrooms. Sounds expensive." "It is." Another pause. Then came the comparison. "She's younger than us." Marcus closed the refrigerator. "There will always be someone with a bigger house. That's not the point." "What is the point?" Simone sighed. "The point is that some people keep moving forward." The words hung between them. Marcus knew exactly what she meant. He simply chose not to fight. That night he sat alone in his office after Simone went to bed. The fireproof box rested inside the locked drawer. After a long moment he opened it. Legal correspondence, trust agreements, ownership schedules, confidential memoranda, pages and pages documenting a future Simone never imagined existed. Marcus stared at the papers. Then he closed the drawer again. Something stopped him. Not fear, not secrecy. Something sadder. A simple question. If wealth changed, Simone's feelings were those feelings worth saving? He had no answer. The following week, Andre invited them to another event. A private investment presentation hosted at a luxury country club outside Columbus. Marcus declined immediately. Andre seemed disappointed. Simone accepted without hesitation. "You're really going?" Marcus asked. "It's networking. At night. It's a professional event. With Andre." The room became quiet. Simone folded her arms. "You always make that sound suspicious. Should I not be?" Her expression hardened. "There's nothing going on." Marcus looked at her. She held his gaze. For a second, he almost believed her. Then she added something she should not have said. "At least Andre encourages people." The words landed harder than she intended. Marcus felt it immediately. Not because of jealousy, because of comparison. Months of comparison, years of comparison, everything reduced to one message. You are not enough. For the first time, Marcus stopped defending himself. "Have fun at the event," he said quietly. Then he walked away. Simone watched him leave. Something about his calmness unsettled her. She expected frustration, arguments, questions. Instead, she got distance, and distance was harder to control. The country club event took place on Friday evening. Andre picked Simone up himself. Marcus watched from the front window as the black luxury SUV disappeared down the street. Then he turned away. His phone rang less than 30 seconds later. "Jonathan Mercer." Marcus answered. "Good evening." "Marcus, I wanted to update you personally." Marcus sat down slowly. The attorney sounded unusually pleased. "The final regulatory review is progressing faster than expected." "How fast? A lot faster." Marcus listened carefully. "The board has approved the transition package." His pulse slowed. "And we're scheduling the executive orientation." Marcus rubbed his jaw. "When 2 weeks?" Silence filled the room. 2 weeks. After years of ordinary life. After months of confusion. After watching his marriage unravel. Everything was approaching far more quickly than expected. Mercer continued. "There is one more matter." "What is it?" "The directors would like to meet the future controlling shareholder in person before public disclosure." Marcus leaned back. The phrase still felt unreal. Future controlling shareholder. The words belonged to someone else. Not the man who spent his days managing recycling equipment in Ohio. Not the husband being quietly replaced in his own marriage. Yet both things were somehow true. After the call ended, Marcus remained seated in silence. Outside darkness settled across the neighborhood. Hours later, Simone returned home. It was almost midnight. Marcus heard her enter through the front door. He heard her heels cross the hardwood floor. Then he heard something else. Laughter. A message notification. Andre. Again. Simone smiled at the screen before she noticed Marcus standing in the hallway. The smile disappeared immediately. How was the event, he asked. Good. Meet interesting people. A few. Spend much time with Andre. The question came gently, not accusing, not angry, just tired. Simone hesitated. For one brief second. And that hesitation told Marcus more than any confession could. The next morning he woke early and left for work before sunrise. By noon, an email arrived from Mercer and Bain. Attached was a confidential briefing package for the upcoming board meeting. Marcus opened the document. His eyes moved across the first page, then stopped. At the top sat a list of directors and major investors expected to attend. One name immediately stood out. Lawson Development Group, Andre Lawson. Marcus stared at the screen. Then he slowly read the line beneath it. Pending partnership proposal review. For the first time, pieces of a much larger picture began falling into place. Marcus read the briefing package 3 more times before closing it. The facts were simple. Lawson Development Group had submitted a proposal for a regional expansion partnership. The project was valuable but not unusual. What caught Marcus's attention was the timing. Andre had started spending more and more time around Simone just months before the proposal appeared. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. For the first time, Marcus stopped assuming the best. He locked the documents away and returned to work. The next few days passed in a strange silence. Simone continued drifting further from him while pretending everything remained normal. They still shared meals, still watched television in the same room, still slept under the same roof. Yet the marriage felt like a house after a flood. Standing, but damaged everywhere beneath the surface. One evening, Marcus came home to find Simone dressed for another event. A navy cocktail dress, designer heels, the perfume she usually saved for important occasions. Another fundraiser, he asked. Private donor reception. Will Andre be there? She hesitated. Probably. Marcus nodded. That answer told him enough. You seem awfully interested in Andre lately. The words were calm. Not accusatory, not angry, just honest. Simone grabbed her purse. At least he understands ambition. The sentence landed harder than she intended. Marcus stared at her. For a brief moment, regret flickered across her face. Then pride covered it again. You think ambition is measured by how expensive someone's suit is? He asked. No. But she looked away. But eventually, results matter. Marcus felt something inside him settle. Not break. Settle. As if a question he had been asking himself for months finally had an answer. That night he stayed awake long after Simone returned home. The house was silent. He sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold beside him. 10 years. 10 years of supporting dreams. Late nights, career changes, family emergencies, financial sacrifices. None of those things seemed visible anymore. The only thing visible was status. And in that competition, Marcus had already lost. Or so Simone believed. The following Sunday, her mother visited. Linda Harper arrived carrying a bakery box and enough criticism to fill the entire house. Marcus had barely sat down before she started. Rachel and Tyler just bought another property. That's nice, Marcus said. Very nice. Smart investments create options. Marcus kept eating. Linda continued. You know, Simone always had so much potential. There it was. The familiar implication. Not direct enough to challenge, clear enough to understand. Simone remained silent. That hurt more than her mother's words. Marcus would have defended Simone if the situation were reversed. Simone simply looked at her plate. After lunch, Marcus stepped outside to clear his head. A few minutes later, he heard voices through the open kitchen window. Linda's voice, then Simone's. Mom, please. I'm just saying you deserve someone who matches your goals. Marcus stood still. You can't spend your whole life carrying a man. The words echoed in his chest. Carrying a man. Marcus looked across the quiet neighborhood. He thought about the trust documents, the ownership transition, the company his grandfather had spent decades building. He thought about the irony. Everyone kept talking about his lack of value while having absolutely no idea who he was becoming, and somehow that made the humiliation worse. Not because he wanted recognition, because nobody seemed interested in his character unless wealth came attached to it. 2 weeks later, the tension finally reached a breaking point. Marcus arrived home early. The house was unusually quiet. He found Simone sitting at the dining room table. A folder rested in front of her. No television, no phone, no distractions, just silence. The moment he saw her expression, he knew. "What's that?" he asked. Simone folded her hands. Her eyes looked tired, but determined. "I've been talking to an attorney." Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, she took a breath. "I don't think we're happy anymore." Marcus felt the words coming before she said them. Still hearing them hurt. "I think we should separate." The room became impossibly still. Outside, a lawnmower hummed somewhere down the street. A dog barked in the distance. Normal sounds. A normal afternoon. The end of a marriage. "I see," Marcus said quietly. Simone looked surprised by his calmness. "That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say?" Her eyes watered slightly. For a moment, Marcus saw the woman he married. The woman who once believed love mattered more than appearances. Then the moment passed. "I think divorce is the right choice." There it was. The final word. Divorce. Marcus lowered his gaze towards the folder. He never touched it, never opened it. Instead, he looked back at Simone. Not angry, not pleading, not desperate, just exhausted. "Is this what you really want?" Simone swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yes." Marcus leaned back slowly. Across the table sat a woman preparing to leave a man she considered ordinary. A man she believed had reached the ceiling of his life. A man she thought could never give her more. What she didn't know was that less than 14 days remained before the board of Hale Environmental Holdings officially confirmed the largest ownership transition in company history. And as Marcus stared at the divorce packet resting between them, his phone vibrated inside his pocket. The caller ID displayed a familiar name, Jonathan Mercer, the lead attorney handling the final transfer. Marcus let the phone vibrate twice before answering. Simone sat across from him at the dining room table. The divorce packet remained between them like a wall neither could cross. "Excuse me?" he said quietly. He stood and walked into the hallway before accepting the call. "Marcus speaking." Jonathan Mercer sounded unusually formal. "We received final confirmation this afternoon." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "So it's done. The transition package is complete. The board vote is scheduled for next Thursday. After that, regulatory disclosure procedures begin immediately." Marcus looked towards the dining room. Through the doorway, he could see Simone waiting, impatient, certain, ready to dismantle a marriage she no longer believed in. "Understood," he replied. "One more thing," Mercer continued. "The directors are requesting your attendance at the Chicago meeting in person. Every member will be there. I'll be there." When the call ended, Marcus remained still for a moment. The truth sat only days away now. Not months, not years. Days. And somehow it changed nothing. Because the woman asking for a divorce had made her decision before knowing any of it. He returned to the dining room. Simone studied his face. "Work. Something like that." She nodded and pushed the folder toward him. "There are temporary separation terms inside." Marcus finally opened it. Pages of legal language, property division proposals, financial disclosures, attorney information. Everything looked clean and organized, as if 10 years could be summarized by paperwork. "Have you already hired counsel?" he asked. "Yes. Andre recommended someone." Marcus almost smiled. Of course he had. The answer surprised him less than it should have. "You seem calm," Simone said. "What reaction were you expecting? I don't know." Neither did she. Anger would have been easier. Desperation would have been easier. Instead, Marcus simply looked tired. That unsettled her more than shouting ever could. The following week moved quickly. Marcus signed nothing. He reviewed documents. He went to work. He attended confidential meetings. And every day the distance between him and Simone became more visible. She stopped asking where he went. Stopped asking when he would be home. Stopped pretending the marriage was recoverable. Meanwhile, Andre seemed to appear everywhere. Phone calls, text messages, professional lunches, weekend events, always explained, always reasonable, never quite innocent. One Friday evening, Simone announced she would be attending a private investment dinner with Andre and several business contacts. Marcus sat at the kitchen island drinking coffee. "Sounds important. It could open doors. For your career. For my future." The wording caught his attention. My future, not ours. Marcus lowered his cup. "You've already left, haven't you?" Simone looked away. Neither answered. Neither needed to. That silence said enough. The investment dinner took place at a luxury hotel downtown. Andre reserved a private room overlooking the city skyline. Investors filled the tables. Real estate executives, bankers, developers, people Simone admired, people she increasingly wanted to resemble. Throughout the evening, Andre remained close, refilling her wine, introducing her to guests, making sure she felt included, important, seen. Near the end of the night, one investor asked how long they had known each other. Andre smiled. "A while." Simone laughed. "Too long." The group chuckled politely. Nobody asked about Marcus. Nobody mentioned her husband. And Simone never volunteered the information. Later, as the dinner ended, Andre escorted her toward the elevator. "You deserve more than settling," he said quietly. The words were smooth, practiced, exactly what Simone wanted to hear. She should have challenged him. She didn't. Instead, she remained silent, and silence had become its own answer. 3 days later, Marcus flew to Chicago. The board meeting occupied an entire floor inside a glass tower overlooking the river. For most of his life, Marcus would have felt out of place there. Not anymore. The directors greeted him respectfully. Attorneys shook his hand. Senior executives discussed strategy and expansion plans. Nobody treated him like a supervisor from Ohio, because inside those walls they knew exactly who he was. The meeting lasted most of the day. When it ended, Mercer walked beside him toward the elevator. "You handled that well." Marcus gave a small shrug. "It's still strange. It won't be strange much longer." Mercer handed him a sealed folder. "What is this final disclosure schedule?" Marcus opened it briefly. His eyes moved across the dates. Board approval, ownership announcement, regulatory publication, media release. Everything had become official. Everything was now inevitable. Back in Ohio, Simone remained completely unaware. That evening, she met Andre for drinks after work. The conversation eventually drifted toward Marcus. "You still haven't finalized things," Andre asked. "The attorneys are working through details." Andre swirled the ice in his glass. "Honestly, I'm surprised he hasn't fought harder. Maybe he's accepted reality." Andre laughed. "Maybe he finally understands his limits." Simone smiled faintly. The comment should have bothered her. Instead, she let it pass. Neither realized how wrong they were. The next morning, Marcus returned home. A courier package had already arrived. Another stack of legal documents awaited his signature. He carried the envelope into his office and locked the door. Inside sat the final approval letter. At the bottom was a projected valuation summary. Marcus stared at the number, nearly $1 billion. Even now it felt impossible. Not because he doubted it, because he had never built his identity around money. He placed the document back inside the envelope. Then another paper slipped free and landed on the floor. A disclosure draft. The future public filing. The document that would soon become available to journalists, investors, regulators, and anyone curious enough to search. Marcus bent down and picked it up. At that exact moment, someone knocked on the office door. "Simone, can we talk?" Marcus quickly turned the document over. "Sure." She entered slowly. Her expression looked different, nervous, uneasy, almost guilty. For a second, Marcus wondered whether she finally intended to tell the truth. Then she took a breath and spoke. "I've decided to move out this weekend." And standing only a few feet away from her, hidden beneath a single sheet of paper, rested the filing that would soon reveal exactly who she was walking away from. Simone's announcement changed the atmosphere of the house immediately. The decision was no longer theoretical, no longer something being discussed through attorneys and paperwork. It was happening. By Saturday morning, half the closet was empty. Boxes lined the hallway. Garment bags hung near the front door. Marcus helped carry none of them. He also did not stop her. That seemed to bother Simone more than she expected. Several times she looked at him, as if waiting for a final argument, a plea, a promise, something. Marcus gave her nothing except courtesy. When she struggled to move a heavy storage container, he lifted it into her SUV without a word. When she forgot her phone charger upstairs, he brought it down. When she misplaced a folder containing insurance documents, he found it and handed it to her. Simple acts, ordinary acts, the kind people rarely remembered until they disappeared. Around noon, Andre arrived. Marcus saw the black luxury SUV pull into the driveway. A familiar feeling settled in his chest. Not anger, not even jealousy anymore. Just clarity. Andre stepped out wearing expensive sunglasses and casual confidence, the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. "Marcus!" he called. Marcus nodded politely. "Andre." The exchange lasted less than 3 seconds. Andre immediately turned his attention toward Simone, helping with boxes, offering suggestions, talking about future plans, future apartments, future opportunities, future vacations. Marcus listened from a distance. Every sentence contained the same message. Your next life begins after him. By late afternoon, Simone stood near the front door with the last of her belongings. The house felt strangely empty already. 10 years had occupied those rooms. 10 years of birthdays, arguments, Christmas mornings, late-night conversations, plans that never happened, dreams that changed. Now everything fit inside several boxes and a few pieces of luggage. "I'm staying with a friend for now," Simone said. Marcus nodded. "I know." Silence followed. Neither seemed sure what came next. Finally, Simone spoke again. "You really don't have anything to say." Marcus looked at her. For a moment, he saw the woman he married instead of the woman leaving. "I hope you find what you're looking for." The words were genuine. That somehow made them hurt more. Simone swallowed hard. Then she left. Andre loaded the final suitcase into the SUV. The vehicle disappeared down the street. Marcus remained standing in the doorway long after it was gone. The house had never felt so quiet. 3 days later, attorneys scheduled the first formal divorce meeting. The conference room occupied the second floor of a downtown office building. Neutral furniture, neutral colors, neutral people discussing the end of a marriage. Marcus arrived alone. Simone arrived with legal counsel. Andre waited downstairs in the lobby. Not officially involved. Still present. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Financial disclosures were reviewed. Property valuations examined. Retirement accounts discussed. Everything appeared straightforward. Marcus owned no luxury properties. No investment portfolio large enough to attract attention, no obvious indicators of significant wealth. Because legally none of the trust assets had transferred yet. Not publicly, not officially. The attorneys moved through paperwork methodically. At one point, Simone's lawyer glanced at Marcus's employment records. Operations supervisor. Marcus nodded. Yes. The lawyer made a note. Nothing more. Just another ordinary middle-class employee. Another man approaching middle age with modest assets. Exactly what everyone believed. Exactly what made the situation possible. After the meeting ended, Marcus exited through the lobby. Andre stood near the entrance, speaking with Simone. Both fell silent when Marcus approached. The pause lasted only a second. But Marcus noticed. "Everything go okay?" Andre asked. Marcus almost laughed. The concern sounded practiced, I suppose. Andre slipped a hand into his pocket. "Divorce is never easy." "No." Andre nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes people just outgrow each other." Marcus looked directly at him, for the first time in months. "You believe that?" Andre smiled. "I believe people deserve the life they want." Marcus held his gaze, then nodded once. "Interesting. Nothing else. No confrontation, no accusation." Marcus walked away. Behind him, Andre looked strangely relieved, as if he had expected more resistance. The following Thursday, Marcus flew to Chicago again. This meeting was different. No preliminary discussions, no reviews, no hypotheticals. Final signatures. Final approvals. Final authority. The boardroom overlooked the city skyline. When the vote concluded, every director stood and shook his hand. Congratulations followed. Questions about future strategy. Expansion opportunities. Leadership planning. For hours, Marcus sat among executives discussing decisions that would affect thousands of employees across multiple states. Yet even then, he thought about Simone. Not because he wanted revenge, because he wondered whether she would have made the same choice if she knew. The answer troubled him, because he suspected she wouldn't have. And that realization made the divorce feel even more necessary. That evening, Jonathan Mercer handed him a sealed envelope, the disclosure timeline. Marcus opened it. Inside sat the final publication schedule, ownership announcement, regulatory filings, media notifications, investor communications. Everything would become public in less than a week. There was no turning back now. No more secrecy. No more assumptions. No more hidden identity. Back in Ohio, Simone met Andre for dinner. She appeared distracted. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired." Second thoughts. She shook her head. "No." Yet the answer arrived too quickly. Andre noticed. "So why do you look worried?" Simone stared through the restaurant window. After several seconds, she finally spoke. "Because Marcus isn't fighting." Andre frowned. "What does that mean? I don't know." And that was the truth. The man she expected to beg for another chance remained calm. The man she considered unsuccessful seemed strangely at peace. The man she was leaving behind acted like he knew something she didn't. And 5 days before the divorce would be finalized, a notification appeared in Marcus's inbox. Final regulatory filing approved for public release. Publication scheduled 9:00 a.m. Monday. Monday arrived gray and cold. Marcus woke before sunrise and sat alone in the kitchen with a mug of coffee he barely touched. At exactly 9 o'clock that morning, the regulatory filing would become public. 9 o'clock. The time sat quietly in the back of his mind, not as a weapon, not as revenge, simply as reality moving forward. Across town, Simone was preparing for the final divorce hearing. Her attorney had assured her everything would be straightforward. The property division had already been negotiated. There were no children, no major disputes, no complicated assets. Just signatures, a clean ending. At least that was what she believed. By 8:30, she was already inside the law office conference room reviewing paperwork. Andre sat beside her. Not officially involved, not legally necessary. Yet there he was, present for every important step. The symbolism no longer required explanation. "You nervous?" he asked. "A little." "Don't be." He smiled confidently. "By this afternoon you'll finally be free." Simone returned the smile, but it felt weaker than she expected. Something still bothered her. The memory of Marcus's calmness, the complete absence of panic, the strange certainty he carried through every stage of the separation. Most people fought for a 10-year marriage. Marcus hadn't. That fact lingered in her thoughts. At 8:52, Marcus entered the conference room. Dark suit, simple tie, no dramatic entrance, no anger, no visible emotion. Just the same steady man everyone thought they understood. Andre leaned back comfortably in his chair. The attorney began reviewing final documents: property allocation, retirement accounts, home equity, vehicle ownership. Everything proceeded exactly as expected. Simone would retain a larger share of the marital assets. Marcus had accepted the terms without argument. Several times her attorney seemed surprised by how cooperative he remained. Eventually, the final signature pages appeared. The moment had arrived. The attorney slid the papers across the table. "Once these are signed, the marriage will be legally dissolved." Silence settled across the room. Marcus picked up the pen first. Andre watched him closely. "So that's it?" Andre asked casually. Marcus glanced up. "What do you mean, no last-minute objections?" The attorney frowned slightly. Andre wasn't supposed to participate. Still, nobody stopped him. Marcus placed the pen against the paper. "I don't see a reason." Andre smiled. The expression carried satisfaction, victory, maybe even relief. Beside him, Simone folded her arms, part of her expected sadness. Instead, she mostly felt anticipation. A future waiting beyond this room, a better future, or so she believed. Then Andre laughed softly. "Some men are built for comfort." His eyes shifted toward Marcus. "Others are built for success." The room became awkwardly quiet. The attorney lowered his gaze. Even Simone seemed uncomfortable. But Andre didn't notice, or didn't care. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then he signed the document. No argument, no reaction. Just a signature. One after another. Page after page. 10 years reduced to ink. When he finished, he slid the documents back across the table. The attorney reviewed them quickly. "Congratulations," Andre said. The word sounded cruel. Marcus stood. He gathered nothing except his phone. No speech, no dramatic exit, no attempt to defend himself, just dignity. As he reached the doorway, Simone finally spoke. "That's all?" Marcus paused. She hadn't planned to ask the question. It simply escaped. He turned toward her. "What else should there be?" The answer left her unexpectedly hollow. For a second, she remembered their first apartment, the old sofa they bought second-hand, the nights they stayed awake making plans neither of them could afford. The man standing in front of her had helped build every part of her adult life, and she was letting him walk away. Still, she hardened herself, because people didn't leave successful futures. They left mistakes, and she believed Marcus had become one. Then she said the sentence that would follow her for years. "You're good at being small." The words landed heavily in the room. Even Andre looked surprised she had said them aloud. Marcus remained completely still. No anger, no wounded expression. Nothing. Only a brief sadness behind his eyes. Then he nodded once. "Goodbye, Simone." And he walked out. At exactly 9 o'clock, while Simone remained inside the conference room and Marcus stepped into the elevator, a regulatory filing became publicly available across multiple financial databases. At 9:03, an analyst in Chicago noticed the ownership announcement. At 9:07, a trade publication published its first article. At 9:11, financial reporters began sharing the story. At 9:15, the first headlines appeared online, And at 9:17, while Simone sat beside Andre discussing lunch plans after her divorce, her attorney's phone suddenly started ringing. He checked the screen, then frowned. The phone rang again immediately, and again. A third call followed less than 30 seconds later. The attorney finally answered. As he listened, the color slowly drained from his face. Then he looked directly at Simone. "There's something you need to see." He turned the phone toward her. On the screen was a breaking financial headline. The article featured a photograph she recognized instantly. Marcus Hale. And beneath it, a number so large her mind refused to process it. $2 billion. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Simone stared at the screen as if the headline belonged to someone else. Not Marcus. Not the man she had just divorced. Not the man she had spent years describing as comfortable, ordinary, and unambitious. The article remained unchanged. Marcus Hale named controlling shareholder, following $2 billion ownership transition. Below the headline sat a photograph taken only days earlier in Chicago. Marcus stood beside a group of executives in dark suits, confident, respected, entirely unfamiliar. "What is this?" Simone whispered. Her attorney took the phone back and opened another article, then another. Each reported the same story: board approval, ownership transition, environmental technology holdings, controlling beneficiary, estimated personal net worth approaching $1 billion. The conference room suddenly felt too small. Andre grabbed the phone. His expression tightened immediately. "This can't be right." The attorney looked at him. "It appears to be very right." Andre continued scrolling. The confidence that had followed him all morning disappeared one article at a time. Public records, business journals, industry publications, every source confirmed the same thing. Marcus had never been the struggling middle-class husband they imagined. He had been the future owner of an entire corporate empire. And now the future had arrived. Simone felt her stomach drop. Not because of the money. At least not only because of the money. For the first time, she understood something much worse. Marcus had known. He had sat across from her, listened to her criticism, watched her walk away, signed the divorce papers, and never once tried to use wealth to change her mind. The realization hit harder than the headline itself. Did he know before today? She asked quietly. The attorney looked uncomfortable. If the reports are accurate, the transfer process began months ago. Months. Simone's chest tightened. Months of comparing him to Andre. Months of treating him like a disappointment. Months of believing she understood his future. Meanwhile, Marcus had been carrying a secret large enough to change everything. And he had never mentioned it. Across the table, Andre remained focused on his phone. Searching, verifying, trying desperately to find some inconsistency. Instead, he found something else. A familiar company name. His own. Lawson Development Group. His expression changed instantly. What Simone asked. Andre didn't answer. He opened another article. Then another. A partnership proposal involving Hale Environmental Holdings appeared in multiple trade publications. Nothing final. Nothing guaranteed. But enough. Enough to reveal why the company mattered. Enough to explain why he had spent so much time researching Marcus's family background. Enough to expose questions he didn't want asked. Simone noticed his silence. Andre. He locked his phone. It's complicated. That answer immediately raised alarms. For the first time all day, Simone looked at him the way Marcus once had. Carefully. Suspiciously. What does that mean? Nothing. Then answer me. Andre exhaled sharply. I knew there was family money somewhere. The words landed like a slap. Simone froze. You what? I heard rumors years ago. How many years? He looked away. Too late. The damage was done. You knew not like this. Did Marcus know you knew no? Then why didn't you tell me? Andre hesitated. Again, the hesitation said enough. Because if Simone had known, things might have unfolded differently. And Andre understood that. The room suddenly felt smaller. The story she had believed for months began collapsing piece by piece. Not because Marcus had deceived her, because she had stopped asking questions once she decided who he was. Meanwhile, Marcus stepped out of a black sedan in downtown Chicago. Reporters waited near the entrance of a sustainability conference. Industry leaders shook his hand. Executives greeted him by name. Cameras flashed. The attention felt uncomfortable. Marcus preferred operations floors to conference stages, preferred work to publicity. But today wasn't about preference. The announcement had become public. There was no hiding anymore. Inside the venue, Jonathan Mercer approached with a smile. "Quite a morning." Marcus nodded. "I've had quieter ones." Mercer laughed softly. "You realize your phone is probably exploding right now." Marcus pulled it from his pocket. 31 missed calls, dozens of messages, former colleagues, old acquaintances, business contacts, people who suddenly remembered he existed. He scrolled through them without responding. Then his thumb stopped. One message. Unknown number. Short, simple. Only 4 words. "Why didn't you tell me, Simone?" Marcus stared at the screen. No accusation, no anger, just confusion, maybe regret. For several moments he considered replying. Instead, he locked the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Because the truth was difficult. He hadn't hidden the wealth to manipulate anyone. He hadn't concealed it to create a dramatic reveal. He simply wanted one thing: to know whether he was loved before the money arrived. Now he had his answer. And several states away, sitting alone, after Andre abruptly left the law office, Simone opened the original article again. She studied Marcus's photograph. The same face, the same eyes, the same man. Nothing about him had changed, only what she knew about him. And for the first time since the divorce began, she realized the most painful possibility of all. She may not have lost a billionaire. She may have lost the only person who had ever loved her without asking for anything in return. Then her phone rang. The caller ID displayed a name she never expected to see: Jonathan Mercer. 1 year later, the headlines had mostly moved on. The billionaire reveal that once dominated business media became old news. New scandals replaced it. New success stories appeared. New names filled the front pages. But across dozens of cities, thousands of people still felt the impact of Marcus Hale's decision. The Hale Workforce and Environmental Foundation officially launched that spring. What began as a personal idea became a national initiative. Former manufacturing workers received retraining grants. Small communities gained funding for environmental restoration projects. Technical scholarships opened doors for families who had never imagined college was possible. Marcus spent more time visiting training centers than attending corporate galas, more time talking with workers than speaking to reporters. The wealth had changed his opportunities. It had not changed who he wanted to be. One afternoon in Cleveland, he walked through a newly opened vocational facility funded by the foundation. Students filled classrooms, older workers learned new skills, young parents prepared for careers that offered stability instead of uncertainty. Several people stopped to thank him. Marcus accepted their gratitude politely. But every time he remembered the same thing. His grandfather had never designed the trust to create a rich man. He had designed it to reveal character. That lesson stayed with Marcus more than any number attached to his name. Across town, Simone read an article about the foundation while sitting alone in a coffee shop. The photograph showed Marcus speaking with a group of apprentices. No luxury cars, no expensive displays, no celebration of wealth. Just quiet purpose. For a long time she stared at the image. The regret no longer arrived like a storm. It came differently now. Quieter, more honest. The divorce had forced her to confront things she spent years avoiding. Her obsession with status, her constant comparisons, her willingness to mistake visibility for value. Andre had faded from her life months earlier, after investors learned he had concealed information while positioning himself around Marcus's business connections. Several partnerships quietly disappeared. Nothing dramatic, no public destruction, just consequences. The kind that arrived slowly and stayed. Marcus never helped create those consequences. He never needed to. People revealed themselves eventually. The truth usually handled the rest. Late that summer, Simone attended a public fundraising event hosted by the foundation. She stayed near the back of the room, not hidden, not seeking attention, just listening. Marcus spoke briefly before the program began. His words focused on opportunity, dignity, and second chances. Nothing about his wealth, nothing about the divorce, nothing about betrayal. When the event ended, their eyes met across the crowd. For a moment, neither moved. Then Simone walked toward him. "I just wanted to say congratulations." Marcus smiled politely. "Thank you." She nodded. There were 1,000 things she could have said. Apologies, explanations, regrets. None of them would change the past. And both understood that. "I'm glad you're happy," she said. This time she meant it. Marcus looked around the room filled with workers, students, and families. Then he looked back at her. "I think I'm finally at peace." The answer carried no bitterness, only truth. Simone smiled sadly and nodded once. Then she walked away. And for the first time, Marcus did not feel any weight pulling him backward. Only gratitude for what he had survived. Only clarity about where he was going. Years earlier, people remembered him as a poor-looking husband with an ordinary job. Then they remembered him as the hidden billionaire husband whose identity shocked everyone. But neither version captured the whole truth. The real victory had never been the inheritance. It was discovering that his worth existed long before anyone knew what he owned. As the evening lights glowed across the city and another foundation project prepared to open its doors, Marcus stepped into the future he had chosen for himself. Not defined by money, not defined by loss, defined by the man he became after both. And perhaps the most expensive mistake was never losing wealth. It was losing someone before understanding their value. If you had been Marcus, would you have revealed the truth before signing the divorce papers? Or would you have done exactly what he did? Share your thoughts below and join us for another unforgettable story.